Good evening, everyone. Um, it's been a very long time after my COVID schedule. It took a little bit time for me to come back to you. So, it's been I've been missing you for a while, and thank you for again being here with me again. Um, so today's topic we will directly enter without wasting much time. Today's topic is discovering the design of aphasia. Okay, so first thing is we will be starting from the basics, and the topic is designed again to accommodate every medical student, starting from the first year of the medicine medical student to the one who is currently doing a post graduation, maybe, right? So have patience, follow along the slides, and I promise this session to be really valuable to you. So I'll be starting to share the screen now. Okay, so this is the topic: discover the design of aphasia. So, well, the topic aphasia is really interesting. Not only because you find it interesting to read, but also it is interesting in the fact that how it exists for students. Okay, so if you look at this picture, you may compare it to a modern art, where you go to an exhibition, you see this, it look good, but understanding wise you need someone, right? And this someone could be your friend who's teaching you, or a book that you're reading. Once you are with that book or a person, this aphasia looks good. The topic aphasia, the understanding of it looks really good. Okay, and then if someone asks you to now share about aphasia, okay, tell me what you understood about aphasia. You can compare that question to here someone asking you, tell me what colors you saw. Like, that question is not that comfortable to answer. Though you enjoyed it, though you liked it, you may not be able to exactly replicate what was there for some other person. That's how the topic aphasia is little interesting in the way it exists for students. Well, after this session, what's going to happen is we're going to get to the actual design. So if you look at this ash colors, you may like it, or depending on the picture and your liking. Um, but if someone asks you, what colors were there, it is little easy for you to replicate. Maybe you will replicate even the correct order, exact order from top to bottom, or bottom to top, right? And that is what this session is going to give you a hand on. Like, you're going to have your hand on the design of aphasia. Now here is what I am not promising you. After this, you're not going to be an aphasia expert. Like, you will not be saying everything about aphasia. Okay, but definitely you have a chance to get whatever you're saying, the information to be accurate, as accurate as possible, because you'll be getting your hand on the design of aphasia or design of languaging. Okay, so let's start with the definition. Aphasia. Now, as the definition sees, there are a few things that are highlighted. I will read along and I will explain why they are highlighted. Aphasia can be defined as the loss or impairment of language caused by brain damage. Okay, so two things you need to know: loss or impairment of language caused by brain damage. So someone has a difficulty in language, but the damage is either in his tongue, like the patient has a tongue anomaly, or patient has his tongue cut post trauma, or patient has no other option, like he can't use his hands to communicate, his face disfigured, so he can't communicate through facial expressions. So those things will not be counting under aphasia. So it is integral part of the definition. When you say aphasia can be defined as the loss or impairment of language caused by brain damage. Okay, so if loss or impairment of language caused by cranial nerve damage, it's not included. Okay, so this is what the definition is. So let's see why that first part of highlighted was highlighted. Now, first, for you to really get the grip on aphasia, you need to understand and distinguish two terms separate: language and speech. Both are not the same. Okay, And well, this picture actually communicates that I have been missing you and I love you. Okay. So that's, and this is not only just the communication. Now, based on what I said to you, now we're going to distinguish what is language and what is speech. Okay. So language and speech. Language is the method of human communication, either spoken or written, consisting of the use of words in a structured and conventional way. Okay. So in the previous slide, when you saw the picture, this communicates to you. It's structured form. I know, like, you don't have to have this. Even if this was there, it would have communicated to you. This is a classic symbol of love, right? So it would have communicated to you love, right? So this is something about the language. Now let's get to the other part, the speech. Speech is the expression of thoughts and feelings by articulate sounds. Getting back to this slide again. So if this slide was shown to you and then I don't speak anything, what you get is you are getting a communication because of language. Okay, and the language here used is the picture here and the hand here, and it's saying something about it, right? And the whatever you know about this design and what it means, the spelling, you will have some interpretations. But what essentially happened is there was a communication using a language. The language here was picture. Remember, it's spoken language or written language. You can consider this hand as a paint, like written by a painter, right? So this will be a language. And what you heard along with this, when I was communicating to you that I have been missing, and that's me expressing my thoughts to you through sounds. Okay, and now between language and speech, language includes speech. Okay, but if you separate them again, now speech doesn't mean it's the whole of language. It is just part of language. Okay, so why is it important? We'll go to the next slide. So language and speech, human language is a cognitive process. So when the sign was shown and whatever the interpretation you made, that depends on your cognition. Well, if you have never seen the symbol like this, then you will never know what it is. Like, or you will say that I don't know what it is. That will be the communication between you and the picture, right? Now that's a cognitive process. Whereas speech is a neuromuscular process. Like me speaking, when the sound is getting produced, there is neuromuscular process involved in that one. That alone stands as speech. Now, again, as I said, why it is important now, impairment in language are referred to as aphasias, whereas impairment in speech are known as dysarthrias. Okay. So some students collapse this, okay, impairment in speech, language, so that's why this much of work we need to do to differentiate between language and speech so that we can separate aphasia from dysarthria. There was another section highlighted in the definition, the brain damage. So let's look like what area of the brain needs to be damaged so that the patient develops aphasia. Well, the words you need to remember is this one: periselvine areas of the left cerebral hemisphere. Okay, and there are 7 areas according to Vernix I don't know the pronunciation of this. Maybe I'm accurate. Guestwin model of language processing, and the commonly known areas. Okay, like 7 areas that are commonly known by first year MBBS student will be only 3 areas. Among the 7, they will know only 3 areas. That would be Broca's area, Vernix area, and the conduction pathway or the arcuate fasciculus. Well, this is something which you need to unlearn. In first year and maybe in second year as an MBBS student, you would have been start by knowing, oh, there are 3 types of aphasias. Now you have to unlearn that. If you want to really get the grip on the design, it is not 3. There are more types of it. Okay, which we will discuss in the session. Okay, first, and it's difficult to unlearn. Imagine you learned how to write in a wrong way. You have practiced the whole thing in your school, and in college, someone tells you you're holding the pencil wrong. Even though if you know that, oh yeah, I'm holding it wrong, you will not be comfortable to change it. Okay, so you are going to have that unlearning being done in this, which may not be comfortable to you, but we're going to smoothen it over the course of the session. So don't worry. Okay. So also these areas are colored differently, because just to give a pictorial representation of the areas that are going to come in future images. So this Broca's area, I don't want you to remember the numbers. It is there for your use, but currently I want you to get familiar with the names that are going to be used here for the rest of the session. So this you get a grip on the design again. So Broca's area, primary motor cortex. These two areas are there in the frontal lobe. Arcuate fasciculus, well, it is in the lower parietal region, tries to communicate between the frontal lobe and the temporal and the occipital. Vernix area, angular gyrus, these two things are there in the Vernix area is in the temporal lobe. Angular gyrus is a marginal region between the temporal and the parietal lobe. That's where this exists. Well, don't worry, there's an image coming next. Then there is a primary auditory cortex and primary visual cortex. The primary auditory cortex exists in parietal lobe, and the primary visual cortex exists in occipital lobe. So basically, all lobes of the left side of hemisphere is involved, and these are the areas. I'm going to repeat that again. The areas: Broca's area, primary motor cortex, arcuate fasciculus, Vernix area, angular gyrus, primary auditory cortex, primary visual cortex. Don't worry about the numbers. You can try to memorize them or get familiar with them later. For this session, they are not that important for this session. Okay. So let's look at the picture now. So this is what I was communicating. This is the Broca's area. So you see the red color here, and it communicates Broca's area. So this area is need to be damaged for a person to get Broca's aphasia, also called as motor aphasia. Okay, I don't intend again you remember this name. You will as we go through a session, you will. So this one, the yellow region in the temporal lobe, that is the Vernix area. So if this area is damaged, you will get Vernix aphasia or sensory aphasia. The patient will present you with this aphasia. Next, conduction aphasia. It's in black, so you see the black fibers like thing that is communicating this Broca's area and the Vernix area. So that's what is conducting the information between these two from Vernix area to Broca's. So when that is damaged, you get conduction aphasia. Now this blue little thing that is there in front of the red area, again this is in the frontal lobe. Okay, and if this area is damaged, that is called transcortical motor aphasia. And if the area behind the Vernix area, which is there in the parietal lobe and the occipital lobe, if this area is damaged, patient gets transcortical sensory aphasia. So motor aphasia, transcortical motor aphasia, conduction aphasia, sensory aphasia, transcortical sensory aphasia. So repeating the areas again, Broca's area now. This is arcuate fasciculus and fibers beneath. This is the Vernix area. This is primary motor cortex. This is primary sensory cortex, which includes auditory and visual. Auditory will be in the parietal region, and the visual would be in the occipital region. Okay, so I want you to get the design of it. This design very important. So the only thing that is connecting these two parts, the motor part and the sensory part, is this conduction fasciculus. Okay, so basically what you have read in first year is only the inner side, the red, yellow, the Broca's area, Vernix area, and conduction. So we were told this area involves motor aphasia, this area involves sensory aphasia, this is conduction aphasia. All the things are global aphasia, right? But now, so global aphasia includes these also, which I'll discuss in the coming slides. Okay, so get familiar with the areas and the aphasia that happens because of involvement of each areas. This is not complete. We're going to discuss again. Okay, and these are the two aphasias where it is not the individual regions that are involved. So there are more than one areas involved. Then you get these either of these two aphasias. Okay, so one is mixed transcortical or isolation aphasia. This involves transcortical motor, this one, and transcortical sensory aphasia, like this one. So this area is damaged and this area is damaged, leaving only the initially what you learned in first year, only those areas left alone. So what it produces is mixed transcortical or isolation aphasia, like this area is isolated from the rest. So there's no connection front or back apart from this primary model. Okay, and then global aphasia. Global aphasia is all areas, all the colored areas that are there are involved, including the conduction fibers. Okay, and that would indicate global aphasia. So just going through aphasias again. So there is Broca's aphasia, Vernix aphasia, conduction aphasia, transcortical motor aphasia, transcortical sensory aphasia, mixed transcortical aphasia, which is like both things are involved, also called as isolation aphasia, because this area got completely isolated from the rest of the brain. The global aphasia, which is like all areas are involved. Okay, and if you, well, this is for you. Everything is put in one place so that you can take a picture, screenshot of it, so that you can use it for future reference. Now, just getting, okay, this is the area involved and this is the presentation that's going to happen as a name is not sufficient to understand aphasia. So you need to understand what are the functions of each part of that brain so that you can understand how it will manifest as an aphasia, what the patient will manifest as of, as an expression, how it is going to be deficit. For that, you need to understand the function of each part of the brain. Just like you would want to know how to use the spanner, what is the function of the spanner, what is the function of the screw. Like without knowing that, you can't operate on a machine. Without knowing the function of these areas, you can't get a hold on design of aphasia. So next, we are going to get the hold on the functions of each area of the brain. Okay, so and you also will notice that I have not used the same pattern for areas. Sometimes it's Broca's areas is mentioned first, and sometimes primary motor cortex, as you can see here. The intention has been that you get familiar with the areas irrespective of the location and the way it is presented to you. Okay. So primary motor cortex, if you remember from the picture, blue colored one, which was front of Broca's aphasia, Broca's area. So this has a function in initiation and moderation of speech. Like you want to communicate something through speech, this handles initiation and moderation, and also in writing. So remember, language is both speech and writing. So it also initiates and moderates actions that you're going to write. Okay, that is the primary motor cortex. Now coming to the Broca's area, the actual one area which is like direct communication with Vernix, it maintains the fluency. So if you're speaking, the fluency of that is mainly in control of Broca's aphasia. So Broca's area, I'm sorry. Okay. Next thing is the arcuate fasciculus. This is the connecting pathway. What it connects? It connects Broca's area to Vernix area. Okay. So next, go to the Vernix area. Well, you'll see the area number. So Vernix area is quite little. Um, a series of areas are named. These are Brodmann area numbers, which I'm again not asking you to remember. You don't need that remembering the numbers to understand this session at least. Okay, so but it has a huge set. Why I'm saying that is there are some areas, there's some confusion that can happen to you if you go through multiple texts. Some texts may involve only 22 and 21. Some texts may involve the whole of the numbers. Some text may be inaccurate to what you already know. So don't worry about that. Okay, because it's still ongoingly changed. Few areas were added even like last couple of years, maybe this also. So you don't have to worry about exactly remembering the numbers. But 22 and 21 definitely for sure. That has been there in every model someone who has suggested. Okay. So this Vernix area, what it does, semantic processing. I want to elaborate a little bit about semantic processing here. Mostly the way it is learned is comprehension, understanding. Okay. So I want to get a little bit deeper than that. So the function of Vernix area is semantic processing. So what it means is, like, semantic means it's a general information. So if I ask you to say something about mother, you will say a few sentences about it. So that's the general information that you know about a particular substance or a thing or a topic. So that will be the semantic processing. So these kind of processing will happen. So if someone there's a thunder heard, you will connect it to rain and all those things. The general information that you're aware of it, that will be semantic processing. So one next area your sound enters and one next area does the semantic processing. That's a thunder. Okay, that is not a horn of a vehicle, it's thunder. And now it may be raining. Like the next associated general information, that would be semantic processing. And angular gyrus, well, some consider this as a part of Vernix area. If you see, like in the table, I've included that area under Vernix, but some people keep it separate. So having it here, and the importance is, well, there's a syndrome which we'll be discussing in some other sessions along with, for the impact on damage on angular gyrus. But for now, to understand the functioning, you can get that angular gyrus is necessary for reading and sentence generation. So predominantly I'm using now angular gyrus also, right? I'm trying to read and I'm forming sentences. making mistakes or trying to correct them or give it a better form. So this reading and sentence generation for me is now happening through anglovirus. Okay, a part of Vernix area according to some. Next is primary auditory cortex. So the green thing that was there behind the yellow part in the image that you saw, that comprised of two areas. That is primary auditory cortex belonging to the parietal lobe and primary visual cortex that belongs to the occipital lobe. So the auditory cortex processes the auditory stimuli and the visual cortex processes visual stimuli. So these are the functions. Well, I gave it a little bit in-depth time for this. Okay, but still, if you're not familiar, don't worry. Just move along. You will have this video along with you. In case if you read it again, if you need it again. But I guess this much work is sufficient for this slide. We'll go to the next one. Okay, so who is he? We are maybe you're unexpecting. Like I'm not asking any question. Suddenly there's a question like who is he? Well, this task I want you to do it. Okay, take this as a task, as an exercise, and really participate in this question. So my question to you is, who is he? I don't want you to type anything in the chat section for now. Don't worry about it. I want you to answer it for yourself, either in speech or writing. Okay, so the question is, who is he? You can write I don't know also, not an issue, but the question is there and you're going to answer to it something by looking at this picture. Few seconds on this, because next I'm going to explain the design based on this question. Many people make use of Albert Einstein's I named him Albert Einstein's works to develop science. We are using his picture here to understand aphasia. Okay, so let's begin. Let's understand the language characteristics in aphasia. What happens to the language characteristics? Well, now consider that you're asked to say or write the name of a person after hearing his voice or seeing his photograph. Well, on this module, you could just see his picture. That's how you could answer. Uh, uh, so that after hearing his voice, so you can't hear Einstein's voice, but after seeing his picture, if you had figured out he is Einstein and you'd have written something, so you've done that part of the work. So let's see what happened. First thing is there was processing of the auditory or the visual stimuli. Well, in this case, the picture, it's a visual stimuli. So there was the processing of visual stimuli that happened. And how it happened? It was your primary visual cortex in this case, or if you're hearing someone's voice, it will be primary auditory cortex and Vernix area. This is what does the processing work. And then that information is relayed to Broca's area. See, including the question like what is the name, that is the information. And then you see the picture. Then you see like I need to respond. That is the question being asked. The question mark, it says that you have to respond with an answer, right? All this processing happened. The question, the picture, and the question mark, and what you need to do after that. Now that happened. Now that information is now relayed to the Broca's area. And that needs arcuate fasciculus. Well, the other components involved, I've simplified it, but don't worry, this is sufficient. If you have a knowledge about it and you're trying to relate that, don't do that. Currently, keep it simple like this. Information is relayed to Broca's area via arcuate fasciculus. And then the Broca's area, along with the primary motor cortex, the front part of it, the frontal lobe, helps you in fluently expressing the name. So if you did write the name on the book and or you used your language to communicate, though I couldn't hear, you tried to communicate, yeah, it's Albert Einstein, then it was your primary motor cortex along with Broca's areas that was in action. Okay, so this is what happened when that question was asked to you. Okay, so let's see what will happen in case of aphasia and what component of it was generated, like by which lobe, and what would happen if the damage happened to that lobe. These are the language characteristics that is expected for you to answer, like what happens to individual parts. Okay, so I've highlighted them in red. So the naming, see, for you to name that person, okay, you had to understand the question, you had to process the picture, you had to relay that information. So if you look, naming can be affected in aphasias that involve any of these areas. Okay, but there are few exceptions. The exception one is naming may be mildly impaired in transcortical motor aphasia, that is the primary motor cortex involvement, because Broca's area is spared, so names are sometimes deeply embedded in the Broca's area alone, that may be sufficient to recall a name. So it may be mildly impaired. And next thing is naming may be mildly impaired in conduction aphasia. Okay, why? Because we are discussing that the common pathway between Vernix and Broca's area is the arcuate fasciculus, but there is also another deep fibers that are running between them. So in some patients, maybe that is sufficient to just maintain the naming part. So these are two conditions where the naming may be mildly impaired. One more thing about the naming is it is the most common part, most common thing that is affected. Like in any dementia cases, what goes off first is naming. Excuse me. Okay, so we are just restricting to discussion under aphasia. So naming affected in any area involvement, but mild sparing can happen if the in cases of conduction aphasia and transcortical motor aphasia. Next thing is the fluency of speech. Well, this is easy. I took like you were knowing like how what gave you fluency to write or speak was Broca's area and primary motor cortex. Okay, so now these areas are the areas that are need to be damaged for a person to have non-fluent aphasia. The rest of them will have fluent aphasias. Okay, so let's see what areas are like in what conditions these two areas are involved. It's simple to say Broca's area is damaged, so it's in Broca's aphasia. Primary motor cortex, so you can also say fluency is not there or absent. It becomes non-fluent even in transcortical motor aphasia. These two things you can say, right? But what goes often missed is it can also be missed in mixed transcortical aphasia, sensory or motor, like see the both areas are involved. That involves primary motor cortex. So in isolation aphasia or transcortical aphasia, even in them the fluency is gone, and even in global aphasia, even there the fluency will be gone. So if someone asks you what are the fluent aphasias and non-fluent aphasias, can you do remember global aphasia and mixed aphasia also as cause for non-fluent aphasias. Next is auditory comprehension, like the hearing the voice. This requires Vernix area and primary auditory cortex. Right? Someone like the thunder, you heard it and you have to comprehend, like you have to process that information and do the semantic processing. For that, you need Vernix area and primary auditory cortex. Either of these things are damaged, then auditory comprehension is impacted. Then there is reading and visual comprehension. So you saw the picture, the question mark, and the Einstein, that requires Vernix area and primary visual cortex. If either of these two are involved, then the patient will have impacted reading or visual comprehension. Just answering what aphasia this will cause, it will be seen in Vernix aphasia. The auditory comprehension will be impaired in Vernix aphasia, transcortical sensory aphasia, again mixed aphasia and global aphasia. Okay, you see the pattern now. Yeah. Next thing is the reading. Same again. Reading comprehension is impaired in Vernix aphasia, transcortical sensory aphasia, mixed aphasia, and global aphasia. I think now you're getting familiar with the pattern. Okay. And why I'm taking so much time is, see, after that, many times in aphasia, when you read, there is a table that is generated for the whole of the aphasias. And these are the components that you need to label. So you may find normal or impaired, impaired or normal, or sometimes where you're expecting impaired, it's given as normal. All this confusion can happen in the table if you don't go through the concepts. So I'm giving you a little bit more time on this. Kindly bear. This is for your interest of you getting it for a long time. Next is language characteristics in aphasia. Reading aloud is paired in transcortical sensory aphasia that affects only the primary auditory cortex. So there is a hidden message here. So reading aloud, again, you're going to, like when I'm reading this, I'm reading aloud to you, the slide. So visual cortex involved, Vernix area processing involved, conduction through arcuate fasciculus involved, and Broca's and primary motor cortex involved. So I'm reading aloud like that. So any of this area is damaged, then this is going to be impacted. But if you look at this, what was not involved was transcortical sensory, like the primary auditory cortex. So I'm not doing any hearing. No one is speaking to my ear saying what I need to speak to you. So whatever is happening is through the visual stimuli I get and what's happening, the processing and communication happening inside my brain. There is no other external voice that is guiding me what I need to read. So this reading doesn't require like primary auditory cortex, right? So you will have that spared. Really, reading aloud is spared only in that case. Only when this area is involved. Primary auditory cortex is involved. Person has no issue with reading. Okay. But any other area involved, reading aloud is impaired. Okay. So next, let's go for normal speech and writing. So also please give your attention. It's normal speech, not speech impairment. Normal speech and writing. They are impaired in all aphasias, albeit differently. They are like someone as fluent and non-fluent, but in both the cases, speech is affected. We are not going to go into details of what kind of speech in each aphasia in this session. We will plan in future, but you need to get writing and normal speech is impacted in all aphasias. Next is the repetition. This is one more language characteristic you need to know, very important. That's why it's highlighted in red, different from the rest. And a little bit explaining needs to go for repetition. See, repetition is simple. I am asking you to say something, you say it. That's the repetition. Okay. So what happens? Let's see here. Repetition is good to normal in aphasias with sparing of Vernix area, Broca's area, and arcuate fasciculus. The areas that you learned in the first year of MBBS or a second year of MBBS. Okay. So if the central part of the language areas are undamaged, not touched, then repetition is good to normal. But if there is any damage to either Broca's area or the arcuate fasciculus or Vernix area, repetition is impaired. Okay. So next, this is the next task to you in this session. So the command I'm going to tell you is repeat what I say. Okay. So the command we are doing the repetition exercise. I'm asking you to repeat something what I'm going to say. That is the command. So you have a visual stimuli and I'm speaking to you. Okay. Repeat what I say. Now let's go what the actual command is. Now what am I asking you to repeat? You are awesome. I'm giving you a few seconds to repeat now. Okay, the command you need to repeat is you are awesome. Okay, I hope you participated in the task. So let's see what happened in repetition and aphasia. So let's look at the act of repetition. See, I asked you to do a task and the act of repetition happened. Okay, in its own way. It doesn't matter whether you said it loud, said it in your head, or wrote it somewhere, or didn't want to communicate. You said, "Hey, what? Like, I'm awesome. I understand, but you're not awesome." Or you could have said, "Like, oh, I'm not awesome." Whatever you would have said, okay. But there was something that happened. So let's see whether there was actual repetition or something else. So let's look into the act of repetition. So the patient understands your command to repeat. So there was a two slide before I asked you that you need to repeat. So you understand that yeah, I need to repeat. The first thing that has to happen by the patient is he has to understand your command that you're asking him to repeat something. And that requires primary visual cortex. You saw the command visual stimuli, repeat what I say. And you need Vernix area and primary auditory cortex. So I was speaking, like repeat what I say. So you will need these three areas to understand that yeah, I need to repeat. Remember, it is to understand your command. For you to understand, you really need these three areas. Next is, but I've colored a little bit these two black and this is red. I will tell you why. Next is the patient hears the auditory information. So after the command was understood, then you will hear the auditory information. Well, repetition as an exercise, you will not be showing picture to repeat. So I showed you are awesome, but that will not count as repetition. Visual stimuli is not the repetition. It will be copying. What is repetition is I'm speaking to you like I said you are awesome and asked you to repeat. You verbally generating that speech, the words saying you are awesome, that would be repetition. Okay. So the patient hears the auditory information. That is what happens next after understanding the command. That requires Vernix area and primary auditory cortex. That processing will happen. Next is this information. Now what you need to respond and repeat, that information is related to Broca's area where arcuate fasciculus and indirect pathway, which I told you sometimes the sparing can happen. Like so, but I have not highlighted that. Let's stick to arcuate fasciculus. So that will relate to Broca's area via arcuate fasciculus. Next, the patient now repeats auditory information. Like whatever he heard, if he had understood the command appropriately, then he would respond to you repeating the same thing, saying you are awesome. So, and that needs Broca's area primarily and also primary motor cortex. Okay. So you understand now the act of repetition, like what goes on in your brain when you, or the patient's brain when you're asking him to repeat something. Now let's look what happens in aphasia. We understood the act of repetition now. Now let's see what happens when the repetition, like how it is impaired in different type of aphasias. So I told you like the colored areas were red only for these three. The rest of them were in black. Okay, because repetition, it's absolute necessary that the integrity of the primary circuit, the central circuit, is maintained for someone to repeat. Okay, so if there is damage either in Broca's area, Vernix area, or arcuate fasciculus, then there is no repetition. That is going to be impaired for sure. Okay, and you see like significantly impaired in conduction aphasia. All three are impaired, but if you look, the significant impairment happens in conduction aphasia. Okay, so I will explain why, but currently you need to get, for repetition to happen, what you need to have is the integrity of the central circuit, Broca's, Vernix, and arcuate fasciculus. Now this is little interesting. This gets a little interesting now. Repetition in aphasia in other circumstances. Repetition is normal in transcortical motor aphasia. The primary motor cortex, if that is involved, that area is damaged, then the repetition is normal. Repetition is excellent in transcortical sensory aphasia. Well, you may say like Vernix area is, and I'm saying Vernix area is damaged, but transcortical sensory aphasia, which needs to do the processing, if that is all like damaged, then the repetition is excellent. You know, how can that happen? Next is repetition is relatively better in mixed transcortical aphasia. Like these also motor area involved, sensory area involved, primary motor cortex and primary auditory cortex involved. Both of them are involved. Then you have a relatively better, that is like intermediate between these two. So one is normal, one is excellent, other one is relatively better in between. Okay, and this needs a little bit of explanation, which I will do. And if you look, the answer to this, why it is excellent, is the lexical semantic processing that you need to understand. So let me just break this down for you. What does this lexical semantic processing mean? See, the lexical or the lexicon that you have is the number of words that you will know. Like it's your personal dictionary. Like if you don't refer to a new dictionary, you don't generate any new words. The words that are already there for you, like mother, father, sky, river, ocean, lion, tiger, apple, mouse, like things that you have, these are the words that you have, that is the dictionary available to you, that is your lexicon. Now that word has to be processed with semantic processing. Okay, so if I'm asking you to like tell me the meaning of the word amiya, okay, and if this word is not there in your dictionary, amiya is, it's a it's a fake word, which it's a pseudo word which I generated just now, right? So it's not there in your lexicon. But now onwards, it will be there in your lexicon, maybe that it was an example used in this session. Amiya. Okay. Now it exists in my lexicon, so definite that this was an example that was used. The word is an example that was used in the session to explain repetition. Okay. Now I added something to the lexicon, or there was a previous lexicon. Now that is this part, the words that you know, the words that are there in your personal dictionary in your head. Now semantic processing. So now when I'm telling you this lexicon, the AMIA is the only thing that I will know. But I was using that in a session to explain things that is the general information. So this session, I was having it on YouTube, and the other side students were listening to it. All the general information that is added later with the semantic processing that happens. Okay. Otherwise, I will use the word AMIA just like that without any processing anywhere. Give me AMIA, like for water, I will say maybe like that, you know, or switch off AMIA to a mobile, I will use it. If the semantic and lexical processing doesn't happen, because I will have the word but don't know when to use it. Okay, so that is the lexical semantic processing. So you need to understand these two processing to understand why it is excellent in transcortical sensory aphasia. Okay, so before we move to that explanation, just want to make it a little simple to you here. So if you look at repetition in aphasia, one important notice, motor aphasia and transcortical motor aphasia are essentially the same. Features are almost the same except for repetition, where repetition is good or normal in transcortical motor aphasia. Same thing again in the similarity between transcortical sensory aphasia and sensory or Vernix aphasia. Both are essentially the same features. Both have same language characteristics except for repetition, which is excellent in transcortical sensory aphasia. Okay, so I'm going to give the mechanism to you why the repetition was excellent or normal in a patient who was in having the integrity of the central circuit but had damage either in the primary motor cortex or the primary auditory cortex. Okay, and also an interesting term, echolalia. Well, if you look at this picture, and in our culture and tradition, if we ask, um, many people maybe little, have many sentiments attached to it. Definitely, I have. If someone asks you what is the first word spoken by the kid or the baby, most of them will point its mother, ma, amma, ammi, right? So I want you to get that as an example to this. Okay. So looking from science, why actually baby says ma or mummy or mother or amma as the first word. Okay, see, definitely the baby is not understanding that, this is what I need to call, like this is the person I, if you're thinking, if you were, for a long time you had a belief that, oh, the baby understood this is the person who you need to call, that's why the baby is calling it. I want you to break that one. The evidence is like, that is the language. The If you look at these pictures, the mother is trying to teach baby something. What she'll be teaching? Say ma, say amma, and you look at the way it will be taught to the person, to the baby, right? Say is on the lower tone and it says say amma, say appa, right? Whatever it's taught. The mother usually spends more time with the baby, obvious reasons. And now she's teaching the baby say ma, mother, amma, and the baby starts saying that. Now consider what's happening there, at least for the science, for now what we understand, what's happening there is baby is not understanding anything, but it is learning to repeat something. So that's why the first word the baby speaks is what it heard the most. That would be ma or ammi or amma or mother. Okay, so let's get to the picture. I want you to get to the picture of it. Okay, so let's look at this area of this brain. So what happens? See, when baby is born, consider these three areas are integral circuit that is there. This area of development happens as the child grows. So the baby has considered only these three areas fully developed. So this baby with the brain which having only these three areas fully developed is being heard mother, ma, ammi, or like I will use the word ma henceforth, ma again. So this sensory like processing when it happens, auditory processing when it's relayed without any interference by the primary auditory cortex or the primary auditory cortex or the primary motor cortex, it is going to essentially repeat the same. You see this? It's like a cycle. And sometimes it will repeat twice also. Like you say ma, the processing happens, it's conducted, the Broca area, and it fluently says ma, and it hears it again, and it will go back again, it will repeat again ma. Okay, so that's what happens in repetition. So now you will understand why it is spared in transcortical motor aphasia and transcortical sensory aphasia. Okay, so why these three is absolutely required to generate repetition, that you understood, and why it is spared in this, that you understood. But now you need to understand why it is excellent. Like here it is normal, that is okay, no? Heard, repeated without interference by this, normal, that is understood. Why it is excellent in transcortical sensory aphasia, like this area. Okay, so let's look at the today's example that was there. I asked you to repeat. I gave a command that you need to repeat, and I said the actual sentence was "You are awesome," and you did what you did. For some of you, when you heard that one, "You are awesome," you did not agree with that. Maybe no, I am not that awesome. Or you said, "No, definitely I agree," and you did not repeat. You said, "Yeah, I agree." So what happened there was you did not repeat exactly what happened or what was said to you, because your primary sensory cortex that was there, it interfered, it said something else. Okay, so when I said you're awesome, what you heard was you're awesome, but what got spoken out of that was not the repeat command. Okay, or you said, no, I will not do this task, so that came from this area which processed it in a particular way. Let me not do this task was from this area. Okay, or let me repeat will be from this area. So if there is no modulation by this, then it will just repeat it. If there is, sorry, if there is, yeah, if it will exactly repeat. If there is modulation by this, there is twisting. Like how this twisting can happen. Consider I am again asking you to repeat this one. I am in India. I am in India. I am in India. Okay, when I'm saying this, some people may now say like, oh, I am in India. Is that what is being said? Now that happens because the processing happened. Because it will, the semantic and the lexical processing that happens. Now you have not heard India before, but you have heard India before, definitely. Now that processing happens and that interferes with what you actually need to repeat. Now, same thing you may find, for example, in a text, when you're reading a text, there are some spellings that are interchanged in between. Thread, Thread is the right spelling, but if Thared is also is there, you will be, if you are reading in a hurry, you will read it as thread. That happens because this kind of processing happens, which gives the old lexicon and just masks what is being said. But for a person who doesn't have this kind of interference, he will just speak what was told. So even if you speak a foreign language, King Chu, he would repeat exactly King Chu. Okay, he will not say, "Oh, it was Chinese language," nothing like that. He would just repeat the same thing. So the person doesn't understand the command that you need to repeat. You may ask the question, but he can't understand. He can't process the information. How will he repeat? So if you ask him, okay, so now repeat what I say, and if you're saying you're awesome, he will repeat what I say. You are awesome. Are you seeing the difference? So his repetition is very excellent. He will not even interpret the question as separate and what he needs to repeat as separate. He will just repeat the exact whole thing, including if you cough in between, he will say, like I would not say cough is a like reflex. If you say oh my something in between and you say, he will generate even oh my in between and then say it. That's why it will be excellent. So your books say repetition is excellent in transcortical sensory aphasia because of that reason. Okay, and you also now understand what is echolalia. Maybe you already understood. If you're not, I have to tell you. So I gave you the example. The baby says something and it keeps repeating the same thing because the ma word entered here, processed, related to Broca's area. Ma was spoken again, it is heard again. So this cycles can happen for few times when it's called echolalia, which is the tendency to repeat again and again and again. Okay, and that would be echolalia. So let's move to the slide where we were. Okay, so this was the example. So, well, we did a good job, I guess. So this is the last slide of this presentation. And this again, we don't finish with thank you. I'm going to give you some time to ask any questions if they're there. So I'm going to stop sharing now, the screen now. Okay, um, so if you have any questions, you can start typing it in the comment section and I will respond to that if there is any question. Another exciting announcement I have to tell you. Meanwhile, if you're typing, you can continue doing that, but also hear to what I say. I'm very excited to tell you that for the last 4.5 to 5 years, I have been working on a project which was to make the medical education, especially my branch medicine, simple, at ease, and efficient. And instead of that, I have authored a book called Doctor's Assistant, Your Partner in Clinical Practice. See, my mission is currently the thing I've taken on is um, medicine. So it's like includes clinical part and the practical part of it, the clinical part and the theory part of it. So half the thing I have managed in the clinical book that I have written. So what you're hearing to me, all those things are there in the expanded form in the book that is going to be launched very soon. Just waiting for the date to be confirmed. Once the date is confirmed, I'll let you know in the group that we have. That's one exciting that I want to share, and it's going to be an online edition. It will be in online. It will be launched online in Prudbix. We are moved on. The world has changed, so now many things are happening in online, including this session, and it's a risk that I'm taking to partner you, and that risk I'm taking only because I have partners like you. I trust that you are someone who's going to generate value out of what is being said in that book, what will be the medium that is there. I'm trusting that you will make full use of it, and that's why I'm releasing it on online. Also, in print version has a limited availability in the current scenario, so I want students to have it um, easy access as soon as possible. So I will confirm the launch date, but definitely even before the launch, it will be open for your order, pre-launch order. Okay, so that will be that option will be available. Stay tuned. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe to the channel and stay tuned. I will let you know the further details in the coming sessions. Okay, there is a question. Um, just me, let me show that. Okay, Rose Patel, first of all, thank you for the question. Sir, the question is somewhat not related. Okay, so let me see what is the question. The question is language learning affected in aphasia. See, impairment in language in any form is aphasia. If you see, it was the definition, what it says. I will, okay, I'll not go to definition. I will tell you. It was impairment in language or loss of language. It was not saying impairment in language speaking or language processing or language understanding or language learning. It is impairment of language. So language learning also is affected in aphasia. Okay, and see how, for example, how do I tell you? If a baby at the age of 10 had some amount of lexicon, well, let's not take baby, let's take us only. If you join MBBS. Well, that is the first time when I heard the lexicon, the words medial and lateral. And the first class I remember was the professor was saying medial is the closer to the central part of the body, and lateral is the away from the body. And the same way you have proximal and distal. These were all the new words that were going on. And had a person met with an accident, and that area was damaged, where the Vernix area, the artery processing or the primary artery cortex, that area was damaged. And after that, if you speak the word like person who got a seat in medicine got met with an accident and got that area of brain damaged, well, he will not be, unfortunately, will not be fit to to be in that education in the current circumstance at least. And if you tell him medial and lateral, he will not be able to process the new words. For an example, now that is aphasia, because patient cannot understand the newly spoken word. You can say it is antegrade amnesia, but it definitely affects language, so it is a form of aphasia. Okay, so your question is very related. Thank you for that question, Rose Patel. Well, I'm going to type my website, where there is an author page. We are getting ready to launch the book. Okay, so okay, this is the website that is there, www.drdeepthinker.com. On this page, it's a blogging website that I'm using. There is a page for doctor's assistant, your partner in clinical practice. So post launch, you can get in touch with me at ease. At any moment of time, you go to the comment section in the page, doctor's assistant, your partner in clinical practice, and drop your questions. You don't have to wait for a session to happen. You read my book that is there, and you have any question, you can put the question there. I will respond to it as soon as possible. Okay. Um, well, there is one more question from Rose Patel. You mentioned left hemisphere. Can right hemisphere be also affected? If so, in which condition? No. For you to see, it's an ongoingly developing module. As I said, the Vernix area has a lot of confusion which area to be included or not included. But what is for sure is the language. If the confusion is coming from dominant lobe and non-dominant lobe, take that confusion away. Now we are not discussing that. Your language function, whether you're right-handed or left-handed, is managed by left perisylvan areas. I think that will, sort the confusion out for you. So your dominant hand, non-dominant hand, or the dominant hemisphere, all those things, that doesn't matter for the language function. It is the left sylvian, like perisylvian areas of the left cerebral hemisphere. That is what is involved. Okay, I hope that answers your question, Rospiter. And in case if you find any evidence, ongoing, if you find any new information, please deliver that to me so I can communicate to the students, with whom I get to speak and be. Thank you again for the question, Rospiter. Okay, so any more questions? If there are not any, I really appreciate you joining me for this session. I really wish that this time was fully utilized by you. and hope the design, forget about the everything else, whether you, the design of language and the design of aphasia, that if that stays with you, you can generate the whole table of aphasias. Though we did not discuss the whole of the section of aphasia, even if the design that is there, you can slowly generate. And anytime you read, remember the picture that I showed, the colors that are pattern, you can really replicate the exact colors. So I did it without before I figured out how aphasia exists in a design. Even it was confusing for me. The student I was referring to was me only. How FSA existed for me was when I read, it was simple, understood. But if someone asked, I need to tell someone, very confusing. Okay, and I was an interested student, so same thing for. I felt that most of the students will be going to same thing. Okay, so okay, thank you. See you again soon. Stay tuned for more information on the book and for the future sessions. Okay. Meanwhile, take care. Stay safe. COVID is still on. Okay. Bye.